Hello, welcome to another Chill MTG. We got Vintage Cube on the draft table right now. Pick one, pack one. A lot of options to go with here. Ponder for the blue thing. Noble Hierarchy, you could pick one, pack one. We could take a Watery Grave, kind of do the blue-black, Stoneforge Mystic, but I'm actually eyeing this Gonti up here. It is the only black card in the pack, and this can cut some black to our left. And ooh, here in pack 2, no black card, but there's a Teferi or a Chandra. Either one of those planeswalkers would be great pickup. I'm a fan of black-red a lot, so happy to slam a Chandra here. And just really happy with these first two picks. There's a Goldspan, a Firebolt, Custody Lich, but I think we should just take this Verdant Catacombs, eat some vegetables right here, and just have a black fetch. I wish it was a black-red fetch, but maybe we'll pick up a red-black dual land here. So let's take the fixing and also just help keep us open a little bit. Well, there's a Laelia and a Stomping Ground, but Laelia is just a slam dunk card, especially since we already have a Chandra. And after a Gonti, Chandra, Laelia, here's a Duretti as well. Yeah, get in the deck, Duretti. Grave Titan, Sedgemoor Witch. Definitely the Grave Titan's pretty good. Ooh, and here's a Bloodstained Mire. Yeah, sorry, Bob. Gonna have to pass on a Bob. I would love to have Bob in this deck, but picking up the Bloodstained Mire is just perfect. Snuff Out versus Piankier Nalar. Snuff Out's great because it's a free spell, so especially playing black, we're going to be able to cast this for 4 life instead of paying mana, and that's where I want to be here. Free spells in the Vintage Cube are just pretty broken. There's a Lavacrot Reaches and a Watery Grave. We could fetch up the Watery Grave, but I think we're kind of solidifying into black-red, so Reaches is okay. We'll pick it up. Here's a Golgari Signet in case we want to splash green. Kind of the only choice for us here in this pack. Ooh, Firebolt, Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp could be good with Duretti, but Firebolt's some more interaction to take out some mana dorks or something from our opponent's side. I think we could have gone either way there. Here's a Blood Chief's Thirst. Yeah, that's some other good interaction. Specifically being able to kill planeswalkers makes Blood Chief's Thirst pretty enticing. It's like a Woe Strider Wield, probably for the board. Sedgemoor Witch and Past in Flames. Okay, so let's see what we got going here in pack 2. There's a Hymn. There's a Fractured Identity, pretty far away from that. Shallow Grave, Eater of Virtue, Dire Fleet. Right now we only have 5 creatures. This isn't the greatest pack 2 for our color pair. I'm leaning towards the Dire Fleet just as a creature, and then if we're able to pick up a spell from our opponent, great. The other consideration is Hymn to Turak, or possibly Light Up the Stage, but no, we don't have enough creatures for Light Up the Stage. We're not that aggressive, so Dire Fleet's the way to go. Here's a Prismatic Vista versus Liliana. I kind of want to just pick up the Prismatic Vista now. Liliana would be great. Maybe it'll wheel, but the Prismatic Vista will really just help fix our mana. Collective Brutality and a Reanimate. I'll pick up the Reanimate here. I don't know if that's right. I'm kind of just hedging a little bit here. Ooh, and here's an Inquisition of Kozilek. Yeah. I really love Hand Disruption, especially at 1 mana. Inquisition fits the bill really nicely. All right, so I'm glad we speculated on the Reanimate because here's an Entomb. It's also a Registar and a Lurrus. I kind of want the Registar, but because we picked up the Reanimate, I want to pick up this Entomb. We're not going to go all in on Reanimator. We're just going to hedge a little bit here, and maybe we'll just have some backdoor Reanimator action. Damnation, Phyrexian Revoker, and a Kroxa. Kind of down a little bit on Kroxa. It's just not as impactful enough, but Phyrexian Revoker, you know, very easy to cast and can handle some troublesome cards on our opponent's board, or just set our opponent back some tempo if we name a Signet or something like that. So I'm happy to pick that up. And ooh, here's a card decision. Kolaghan's Command versus Recurring Nightmare. I love both of these cards. I think they're both very strong. Kolaghan's Command is usually a straight 2-for-1, but Recurring Nightmare can just take over a game. We're a little light on creatures, but if you resolve Recurring Nightmare and you have creatures that can utilize it, it's kind of lights out for your opponent. Here's a Mind Twist and a Murderous Rider. Red Elemental Blast if we wanted for the board. I haven't played Red Elemental Blast yet in the Vintage Cube. I just don't know if it's too situational or not. I like the Mind Twist, but I wish we had a little bit more ramp to really take advantage. Probably don't need a him after we take the Mind Twist. I think the Eater of Virtue is probably the pick here, though it may not make the deck. All right, and Liliana Wield? Heck yeah, slam that. Here's a Death Cap Glade or a Godless Shrine. We'll just take the Godless Shrine. We can fetch it up if we need to splash white. Same thing with the Overgrown Tomb. We can fetch that up in case we want to splash something like a Pest Infestation. Little light on creatures. I want to get a few more creatures. We're not a super control-y deck. There's two. I think Registar is probably better for our deck. We don't have a lot of 1 or 2 drop permanents. So we'll pick up the Dinosaur, and there's a Damnation. Happy to see that. Pack 3. Char could be fine here. It's really, I mean, I don't really want Massacre Worm, I don't think. Char's just some more interaction. Ooh, and here's the decision between Bone Crusher Giant, Lily of the Last Hope. We could take a Grist. We do have the splashing for that. Rakdos Signet. We really could take any of these cards. Because we're light on creatures, I mean, even Bitter Blossom, but because we're light on creatures, I'm leaning towards this Bone Crusher Giant. It's interaction and a creature. Otherwise, I would have probably slammed Liliana, the Last Hope right there. Speaking about creatures, there's a Zealous Conscripts. That card is one of the best creatures in the cube. The haste really matters, and stealing your opponent's best card really matters. Best permanent also really matters. There's a Toxic, an Underground Sea, and a Seasoned Pyromancer, but I think we just need the Seasoned Pyromancer here. Again, flesh out our creature count a little bit more. Shriekmaw, Sword. I'm not playing Dockside. It's just too niche here in the Vintage Cube. We'll take Shriekmaw, and we can cut one of these lesser power creatures like the Woe Strider or the Sedgemoor Witch. Ooh, there's a Duress. Yeah. Again, 1 mana hand hate goes a long way in this format. Ooh, and Demonic Tutor and a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I think we'll just take Demonic Tutor on pure power level here. We already have the Blood Chief's Thirst to deal with Planeswalkers, so probably don't need the Hero's Downfall. Fable of the Mirror Breaker could be pretty decent though, but Demonic Tutor is just more powerful. All right, there's a Grief. Yeah, that's a awesome creature. Check out my last video on Grief. It's pretty good. Skyclave versus Massacre Worm. Probably just Massacre Worm for the board. Again, maybe we're not doing the Reanimate Entomb thing. We'll have to make a decision here as we build our deck. Liliana Wield. Awesome. That card's very strong. Happy to see that. So we got double Liliana going on. Love it. Here's a Bone Shredder. We'll take that for the board. Could be okay in some matchups. Toxic Deluge. We already have the Damnation, so we'll take an Iona. Maybe we are going to do Reanimator. I just don't know yet. Okay, rounding out pack 3. All right, let's build this thing. All right, here's the deck. We did get there on creature count. We're okay. I did decide to cut the Reanimate Entomb. That was just a hedge. Didn't really pan out. We got some really great Planeswalkers and spells here, and our mana is going to be okay. So let's take this Rakdos deck into the league. All right, welcome to match 1. We're on the play. Do not think we can keep this hand. 2 spells, 5 lands. Let's ship that one back to Mulligan. Similar hand, but I think we can keep this one. We do have 3 spells, and we can lead out on the Duress, so we'll keep this one. Let's lead out on Swamp and see what our opponent's up to with the Duress. Brainstorm, Chart a Course, Incinerate, and Mana Leak. Okay, I think our options here are to take the Incinerate or the Brainstorm. Incinerate just allows us to keep our Direfleet, but the Brainstorm allows us to potentially cast our opponent's Brainstorm with Direfleet, and we can kill the Goblin Guide with Firebolt. So yeah, let's take the Brainstorm here. All right, our opponent leads out on a Bloodstained Mire. They're going to crack it. All right, and they get a Volcanic Island. So here comes the Goblin Guide. Not afraid of this. Hopefully the Goblin Guide can draw us a land? No, looks like it revealed Liliana the Last Hope. That'll be good eventually. So our turn 2 here, let's just play our mountain and then bolt this Goblin God. And then our plan for turn 3 is play the Direfleet Daredevil and then Brainstorm off of it. So our opponent is holding Mana Leak, so I'd rather they Mana Leak Direfleet than Mana Leak our Liliana. And I definitely don't want them to Mana Leak Daretti, which we just drew. So let's cast the Direfleet here, see what our opponent does. All right, they do choose to Mana Leak the Direfleet. We're happy with that. We cannot pay. And then next turn, we're either going to play this Daretti or Liliana, depending on what our opponent does. And it looks like they're going to chart a course main phase here to draw 2 and discard 1. All right, they discard a Baral. We know they're holding an Incinerate and a land and 2 unknowns right now. Let's fetch end of turn, thin our deck just a touch. We do need a second black source for Liliana anyways. We draw a red source. All right, well, since our opponent has nothing on the battlefield, let's get Daretti down and uptick for Construct token. This will put Daretti out of Incinerate range. And then hopefully this Daretti can just control the board a little bit. All right, our opponent has their 4th land. And they cast Stormcaller. Interesting. Are they going to double Incinerate? Oh no, they're going to double Manamorphose. That's pretty good. That'll get them 4 mana and 2 cards. That's not bad at all. And they'll still have the option to Incinerate if they want to. All right, so they cast a Rabblemaster. Not bad. And they Burst Lightning our Construct token. Okay. That's unfortunate because now we don't have an artifact to sacrifice to Daretti to downtick on the Rabblemaster, so we'll just have to uptick again. There's an Inquisition. I know they're holding an Incinerate, so we'll uptick, and even though we could kill the Seagate Stormcaller, let's Inquisition get their Incinerate out of their hand. So now they're down just to a land. This Rabblemaster is a problem. So we definitely need to draw something else here to kind of deal with this board. All right, OP goes to attacks, and it looks like they're sending everything at Daretti. Okay, I will block the Seagate Stormcaller with the Construct token because the Construct on its own without a Daretti is not very useful. This will at least get that 2-1 off the board. The issue is we now have a Rabblemaster, an active Rabblemaster we need to deal with. Oh no, they have Skull Clamp in hand? Oh man. All right, so there's 4 fresh cards for our opponent. They're going to equip both their Goblin tokens. We are kind of getting just destroyed in card advantage right now. So we do have a Firebolt in the bin. If we draw a land, okay, we do draw a land. All right, we have to Firebolt this Rabblemaster because we got to stop it from making tokens so they can't draw more cards. I mean, they've already drawn 4, but we'll just get it off the board with the Firebolt. All right, now our opponent casts a Goldspan and equips Skull Clamp. So here's 5 damage coming at us. We're going to need to deal with this Goldspan as well now. And if we do, they're going to draw more cards. Okay, Snuff Out was a good draw. This is going to allow us to both play our Liliana and destroy this Goldspan. This is why Snuff Out as a free spell should be a high draft pick. So I'm casting Snuff Out now to try to play around counter magic. And with the Lily, I think we need a downtick. I want to get this Direfleet back in hand, and then our opponent's got a lot of great spells that we could cast off the Direfleet in their graveyard. So we'll downtick, mill 2. Oh, hey, look, we milled a Seasoned Pyromancer. That's even better, because that'll be able to get us 2 fresh cards. Unfortunately, we can't cast the Seasoned Pyromancer this turn. That would have been sweet. But next turn, we'll be able to cast the Human Shaman. All right, opponent basically with a full grip over there. They bolt our Liliana. I suppose we can Chain Lightning back. The only target they could pay right now is to hit us in the face. I don't know if that life's going to end up mattering. We'll see. They do pass the turn. Ooh, we draw a Regisaur. If we play the Regisaur, it's going to make us pitch the Pyromancer. So let's just play the Pyromancer instead, and we'll pitch the Regisaur, because that'll get us an additional card. All right, looks like our opponent's going to hard cast Force of Will. Unfortunate. No plays from our opponent again. There's a Char. Our life total is a little low, so let's just cast this Regisaur. And if we end up pitching the Char, it's okay. We're definitely still losing the card advantage war here. All right, our opponent repeals the Regisaur as well. All right, our opponent probably should have done that repeal on our upkeep, but I'll take it. So there's a Suspicious Stowaway. Looks like they're equipping the Skull Clamp to draw even more cards. And a dashed Ragavan. All right. No whammies, Ragavan. No whammies. All right. They exiled a Lava Claw Reaches, which is fine. All right. So Ragavan goes back to hand. There's a Shriekmaw. But if we get this Regisaur on the battlefield, that's just a pretty good blocker for the Ragavan. We could have also exiled our Seasoned Pyromancer to make 2 1/1s. That would work as well. All right, looks like our opponent's just going to cast Ragavan this turn. Yeah, okay, and they equip the Skull Clamp immediately. Our opponent's down to 7 cards in deck. And then they play Fable of the Mirror Breaker. All right, well, we can deal with that with the Shriekmaw. Do equip Skull Clamp to the Shaman token. I mean, maybe we'll just deck our opponent this game. That would be a cool way to win. All right, let's pitch the Char here. I don't really want to go to 1. And I'd rather have the Shriekmaw. Oh, they're going to Unholy Heat our Regisaur. All right. It's pretty good value for them. All right, so we'll pitch the Char still. And we're still going to just play this Shriekmaw to kill the Goblin. Again, we still have the Seasoned Pyromancer in the bin to exile for 2 1/1s. And we'll pass the turn back. Opponent sacrificed treasure. Okay, so our opponent's casting Dig Through Time. Well, now they're going to get the rest of the cards out of their deck, or they can look at the rest of their deck. So they're back up to 7. They only have 3 cards remaining. Now 2. They abrade our Shriekmaw. Okay. Not good for us. Okay, now they have that Avalanche Riders, which they can equip the Skull Clamp to. I guess Chain Lightning, our opponent here, did hurt us because we would still have an out to this Avalanche Riders if we had 3 more life. So maybe that wasn't a good play on our side. All right, we're on the play. For sideboarding, I took out Grave Titan and put in Massacre Worm. And that first hand had no lands, so we'll have to ship it back. Here's another one for Mulligan. This hand looks great, though. We have Inquisition and Lelia and Liliana, and all the mana we need to cast these cards. I think we'll just put back basic Swamp, and then we can fetch out a Swamp with the Prismatic Vista. We'll lead on Swamp Inquisition, see what our opponent's up to. Unholy Heat and a Braid, Fable and a Goblin Guide. Well, if we don't take the Unholy Heat or the Embraid, then Lelia is just going to die. So let's take the Unholy Heat, and maybe we'll get a way to get the Abrade out of our opponent's hand as well. Expecting our opponent to lead on Goblin Guide, and hopefully they can draw us a card. I'm not sure about that Inquisition pick there. We could have taken just anything. We'll have to see how that plays out. All right, Goblin Guide got us a land, and we draw a second land. Unfortunately, we got 2 3-drops. We'll just have to pass the turn back. Our opponent cracks their Bloodstained Mire for a basic mountain. And then gets in there with the Goblin Guide, revealing a Rotting Regisaur. And then they play a Suspicious Stowaway. Well, the Stowaway is a target for Liliana, so I think we can just play our Liliana here. The Abrade can't hit the Liliana because it can only hit creatures and artifacts. So we'll be able to uptick on the Stowaway, and then we're out of range with the Goblin Guide. Opponent cracks a Scalding Tarn for an island, and then plays their Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Okay. And looks like they attack Liliana, and we revealed a Seasoned Pyromancer. We have a lot of options here. We'll uptick Liliana here, and then our options are to play Lelia or play a Rotting Regisaur, I think. I don't want to play Seasoned Pyromancer yet. I don't want to pitch 2 of these cards. But we can play the Regisaur this turn and pitch the Prismatic Vista during our upkeep. And this will protect our Liliana a little bit better. Chapter 2 on the Fable of the Mirror Breaker for opponent. And it looks like they did pitch their Force of Will and a Braid, so now they got 4 unknown cards in hand. All right, they incinerate the Liliana. Unfortunate, but Lily did her job. She essentially 2 for 1 to our opponent and saved us 2 life. And then our opponent just passes the turn. We'll pitch the Prismatic Vista here on upkeep. And we draw a Mountain. Let's play Lelia here. If they want to double block Lelia, then that means we're getting in for 7 with the Regisaur. And then we'll have to decide if we want to play the land or not. If we play the land, we'll be forced to pitch the Seasoned Pyromancer. So maybe Lelia will exile a land for us to play, and then we can still hit our land drop. So I think that's the plan. It's not an insignificant amount of damage coming at our opponent right now. 10. Regisaur hits like a truck. All right, we do exile a Swamp, so that's pretty sweet. We will play that card from exile. Do they double block Lelia? They do. All right, we'll put the Shaman token in front because it generates treasure. And then we'll play our Swamp second main and pass the turn, planning to pitch our Mountain during our next upkeep. So Fable goes to chapter 3 and flips. Reflection not having haste here is super important. Makes the Fable of the Mirror Breaker just a lot slower of a card. Our opponent cracks a Wooded Foothills for another land, and then they get a Gold Span on the battlefield. Okay, looks like we're racing a little bit. They're going to hit us for 6. Maybe they'll exile another land with the guide. Or reveal another land. They reveal a Duretti. Okay. Duretti not super important here because we can't really downtick as soon as we play Duretti. So I'm looking to just pitch the Pyromancer here. I'm sorry, looking to play the Pyromancer, and we'll pitch the Duretti. We can attack for 7. We definitely have a problem with this Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. It's probably going to name Goldspan Dragon next turn and make 2 of them, or make a second one. So we know we're at least taking 8. So we need to be able to defend from that. So here's Seasoned Pyromancer, and we get a Phyrexian Revoker. That's actually perfect, because now we can play Revoker and name Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. And that'll turn off them making another Goldspan Dragon. Okay. Our opponent is at 3 now, so now they're definitely the one who's needing an answer. I mean, they can get in the air with the Goldspan for 4, but that's just not good enough right now. All right, they Expressive. That's a way to find an answer. They exile and play their island. And they have a Skull Clamp. That's not going to do it. They should attack with the Goblin Guide there and force me to block. Actually, it wouldn't. They need all their blockers. Chandra was a great draw. We can downtick on the Goldspan, and that should be game. We'll have 3 damage guaranteed to get through. So unless they have some sort of instant burn right here for one of these creatures, this will be game. All right, they block, but that's 3 damage and back to sideboarding. All right, game 3 on the draw. This hand is keepable. During sideboarding, I took out Liliana of the Veil and Duretti and then put in Woe Strider and Sedgemoor Witch. I just wanted more creatures in this matchup. Our opponent leads on Scalding Tarn and cracks it for a mountain. They play Ragavan. Okay, well, we do have an answer to that, and that's with the Snuff Out. And this is definitely a mistake right here. We should have played Snuff Out on our turn while our opponent was tapped out. Now our opponent plays an island, and which means they do potentially have Counterspell Magic up. So we'll cast the Snuff Out for 4 life. And there's a mana leak. So definitely a punt there on us. We should have definitely done better ordering our spells, at least playing when our opponent could not have countered it. They make a treasure token and exile our Sedgemoor Witch. We can still deal with this Ragavan, hopefully, as long as they don't have days. So we'll fetch out a mountain and we'll cast Stomp off the Bone Crusher. Looks like that resolves. So we had to use 2 spells when we really should only had to have used 1. No plays from our opponent. So because they had no plays, I'm just going to play this Bone Crusher from exile. All right, they don't counter it. Good. They do incinerate it right away though. Okay. And then they play a Stowaway. I think this is going to be the second time we kill a Stowaway with Liliana. Play a mountain here, play around days, and then uptick on the Stowaway. Pretty good value. Our opponent is down to 2 cards in hand because our Bone Crusher was essentially a 2-for-1 and our Liliana is going to be a 2-for-1. Looks like land and pass from our opponent, which is unfortunate. I mean, they could have hardcast Force of Will, maybe. Ooh, there's Gonti, the Lord of Luxury himself. Let's see what we get with Gonti. Just in a braid, huh? All right. Better than nothing. I kind of wish our opponent would have drawn those 4 cards because that was 3 lands in a row. We'll uptick on Lily here, though we could have downtick for the Bone Crusher if we wanted to, but we can do that next turn. We can then cast Stomp and Bone Crusher if we downtick next turn. So let's just see what our opponent does. All right, they Manamorphose into what? Into Chain Lightning. All right, well, not going to Chain Lightning him back this game. We don't have the mana. Oh, and they Unholy Heat our Liliana. All right, that's pretty good. Pretty good sequence of events. And then they play a Rabble Master. Okay. So depending on what we draw here, I think we just Shriek Maw the Rabble Master. There's a Revoker. I'll probably Revoker on Skull Clamp in the blind because that's probably the only card that gets them back into this. No place from our opponent. Ooh, and there's a Conscripts. We could Revoker, we can Pyromancer, we can Abrade. We have so many options here. Let's just get this Conscripts on the battlefield, I think, and swing in for 7. That may be a bit aggressive. We could Revoker and DT as well for something like Chandra, which is probably a better line, and just save the Zealous Conscripts for later, but Conscripts is better when you can kind of close the game out in a single turn with it. So this is less than ideal. I mean, it's fine, but I think the better line was to Revoker on Skull Clamp and DT for Chandra. We'll see if that bites us. Okay, again, no plays from our opponent, which is a good sign. We get a Prismatic Vista, which we can crack and get another mountain probably. We can just Abrade this Goblin token so they have no blockers. And get in for 6, putting our opponent down to 4. I think I'm still going to Revoker on Skull Clamp. It's like one of the ways they get back into this, but with no creatures on board, it's pretty tough for our opponent. And we can also DT here to go get Chandra as well. I don't know what our opponent's holding. I mean, nothing. They didn't counterspell the Demonic Tutor. Chandra is just the right choice here because Chandra has both card advantage and damage. And even if our opponent wipes the board, we have a Lava Claw Reaches that we can animate and pump. All right, that'll do it for match 1. All right, match 2 with our Rakdos deck. Definitely going to keep this hand. Oh, this is going to be great. We will be able to duress our opponent and hold up Snuff Out. Dire Fleet was a pretty decent draw. All right, so let's see what's going on with our opponent. Mindslaver. They have one other land. I think we just take the Everflowing Chalice here, and they don't even have mana to cast Basalt Monolith Spellseeker. All right, yeah, I'm down for this. If they want to play a 1/1 Ballista, I'm happy for that. And Snuff Out can target the Ballista. Don't want to play Dire Fleet here. I think we'll just hold on to the Snuff Out, and or our other option is to cast Stomp from the Bone Crusher. Neither of which, though, we have to make any. So I guess we could Snuff Out now, and then we can cast Dire Fleet for no value, or we can cast Stomp to just get some additional damage on our opponent. Definitely didn't have to order it that way. We kind of played both of those at sorcery speed. We did play around Counterspell for that reason, though. However, now there's a Jace. Liliana was a kind of a lucky draw here, so we weren't punished for our bad sequence, but we definitely could have been. And our opponent's probably just... Okay, so they're not stuck on mana. So Spellseeker will come down. Let's see what they pick up. Time Walk. Okay. Well, I don't want them time walking into our Lily. I also don't want to discard cards, so let's attack with Lelia. Maybe we'll exile a land. We do exile a mountain, so that was pretty sweet. That will allow us to uptick on the Lily and pitch a Prismatic Vista. And we'll be able to get the Spellseeker off the battlefield. So we'll discard the Prismatic Vista here off the Lily, see what our opponent discards. They discard Mindslaver. All right, good. Don't even have to worry about that card anymore. Definitely not too scared about our opponent's Time Walk. I mean, they don't have a board presence to really do anything with it. Golgari Signet, not scared of that either. I mean, we're going to have an active Lelia here. We regrowth the Ballista. Okay. So we have a couple options. I think it starts with attacking with Lelia and seeing what we exile. So I think we uptick with Lily here. And then the question is, do we play Seasoned Pyromancer or Bone Crusher Giant? Bone Crusher Giant represents a little bit more damage. Seasoned Pyromancer is going to get us a fresh card. Though we could cast Dire Fleet in the future to regrowth our Char here. So I think let's just get Bone Crusher on the battlefield. It represents the most amount of damage. And we'll have lethal next turn if we draw a land, because we'll be able to cast Firebolt from our graveyard. We'll pass it back to the opponent, see what they got. They're going to have something pretty good. They Ballista for 2. Probably not going to do it. We could just downtick on the Lily here, and then they'll kill our Lily in response. So let's actually just discard. Since we drew a Recurring Nightmare, we can bring our Dire Fleet back to the battlefield if we need to. Our opponent discards a land, so they're just holding Time Walk. We'll get in there, see what Lelia exiles. Shriekmaw? Okay. That's not good against the Ballista. Looks like our opponent decides to chump. And then they're going to downtick targeting Lily. We'll cast Recurring Nightmare and pass the turn. Our opponent they need something. They're just holding a Time Walk, which is not going to do it. All right, they didn't draw what they needed. Okay, so we kind of dismantled that artifact deck a little bit. All right, game 2, we sided out the Shriekmaw since it can't hit artifact creatures and brought in the Sedgemoor Witch here, which you see in our opening hand. This hand seems fine. We don't have acceleration anyway, so we'll at least be able to hold up Snuff Out, and then we can play Phyrexian Revoker turn 2. Oh, and Rotting Regisaur was a pretty good draw. All right, with our opponent playing Golgari Signet, I'm just going to Revoker the Signet here and tempo set them back a turn. We did draw a second red source for Seasoned Pyromancer. All right, our opponent's ramping pretty hard. Azorius Signet into Time Walk. Okay. Take another turn, opponent. Take another turn. Chalice for 2. So they have a lot of mana. Not doing anything with it at the moment. We can either play the Regisaur here and just represent the strongest threat we can, or we can Pyromancer and pitch a couple lands and get 2 fresh cards. I don't really want our Regisaur to get countered necessarily. They are representing something like Mana Leak. So let's get the Pyromancer on the battlefield, see if this resolves. All right, they repeal the Revoker in response. I'm okay with that. Let's pitch Snuff Out in a land. Here's Bone Crusher Giant and Recurring Nightmares in return. So our opponent's got, let's see, 2, 4, 8 mana available this turn. So they could do something like Ugin or Karn. Okay, now they got even more mana. So I think that's 11 mana available. So now they're in Eldrazi territory. What are they going to do with this here? Metamorph. Okay. They metamorph their Signet. That gets them some more mana. And then they Fractured Identity our Pyromancer. All right, well, that'll get them 2 cards. It wasn't the worst play. Unfortunately, the Fractured Identity did exile our Pyromancer, so we can't get it back with Recurring Nightmare. They kind of have a million mana online, so I don't know about Revokering. I guess we could Revoker Azorius Signet. That'll turn off 2 of their mana sources, but let's just turn off Mindslaver. Like, I don't want to get Mindslavered, because that's probably one way they could get back in it, to just really screw up our game plan using our own resources. Because their deck looks like something that runs Mindslaver lock. Yeah, they just play a Signet and pass. Totally happy to see that. So I think we just slam the Regisaur here. It's the most powerful threat. Yeah, I don't think our opponent has anything in hand. We can discard the Sedgemoor Witch because we can get it back with the Recurring Nightmare. I want to hold on to the Bloodchief's Thirst just in case they play some sort of Planeswalker. Here's 10 damage coming at you, opponent. Followed by a Recurring Nightmare, and then we'll be able to play the Bone Crusher Giant. Or we could hold the land to pitch to the Rotting Regisaur. Let's actually Recurring Nightmare Sedgemoor Witch out here. It's a little bit better threat than our token. We'll pass here. That way we can pitch the swamp to Regisaur. All right, that'll do it. On to match 3. All right, game 3, we are on the draw. And this is a super keepable hand. Interaction and a Snuff Out with Lelia. Love it. See what our opponent opens up on, but we're going to open up Duress, hold up Snuff Out for sure. All right, Mox Diamond pitching a Swamp for a Scrap Heap Scrounger. Pretty good start, pretty aggressive. Our Snuff Out can target this Scrounger if we need it to. Our opponent's holding a Spear of Heliod, Gideon, and a Skyclave. I think we'll just take the Gideon here, and then we just have to deal with the Skyclave. I'm hoping our opponent misses on a land, that we're probably just going to slam Lelia next turn. Don't necessarily want to run it into Skyclave Apparition. Opponent gets in there, which is fine. There's no creatures in the graveyard right now, so the decision is, do we take this 3 or do we just snuff out now? And I think we just snuff out now. Save ourselves some life here. And then depending what we'll draw, we'll probably just play this Lava Claw tapped next turn. Yeah, Conscript. So we'll just play the Lava Claw tapped and pass. Stoneforge from our opponent. Let's see what they dig up. Jite. All right. Well, that's pretty bad news for us. We will be able to get in there with the Lelia here. Yeah, Jite is going to be tough to beat. We have no way to answer it right now. Duretti can't cast it and exiled. And our opponent found their 3rd mana source. So yeah, here comes Skyclave. That'll take care of Lelia, and we're a bit behind. Liliana the Last Hope was a decent draw. We will be able to uptick and protect Lily a little bit, but our opponent's going to be able to play Jite, and if they have another mana source, they'll be able to play and equip in a single turn. So we'll uptick and pass. There's the 4th mana source for the opponent. So I expect them to just play Jite right now. Yeah, and they're going to equip. So they will get a couple Jite counters here. All right, hopefully we can draw something good here. Bone Crusher Giant. So Bone Crusher Giant would be great, except for the fact that the Jite's got 2 counters on it, so we cannot target the Stoneforge Mystic right now. We can target the Skyclave, however, and then we do have enough mana to cast Bone Crusher. So my plan right now is to double block the Stoneforge Mystic after upticking on Liliana, and maybe that'll be enough. That'll be 7 power, and right now the Stoneforge can only pump to 6. Now it can pump to 5 after upticking on the Liliana. Gonna have to hope our opponent just doesn't have something. So they will play the Spear, which is gonna pump up the Stoneforge. So we got to be able to do at least 6 points of damage, which we can if we double block. So we will double block here. We need to get this creature or some counters off the Jite. All right, so our opponent is pumping. They'll pump twice. All right, and they Swords to Plowshares our token. Okay, kind of blown out a little bit here, a little 2 for 1. 2 more counters on the Jite. This is why Jite is so problematic. We can't really use the Zealous Conscripts too much either, because the opponent will still control the Jite if we steal the Stoneforge or something like that. So let's downtick here. Ooh, we hit Phyrexian Revoker. That's an answer to the Jite, and I think we need to do it. So, because activating the Jite is an activated ability, so we can name Jite here with the Revoker, and that'll turn off the Jite. And then we will have enough mana as well to play Recurring Nightmare. So we'll name Jite here. So this will turn off the Jite. And then here comes Recurring Nightmare on the battlefield. Don't have anything to sacrifice to it yet. Definitely not going to sacrifice the Revoker. So Liliana probably not long for this world because we're not going to block. Luckily, they cannot use the Jite counters to kill a Revoker. So Lily's down. All right, good. No place. Okay. Ooh, and Gonti was a sweet draw. Let's see what we hit off Gonti here. Council's Judgment, Mesmeric Fiend, and Figure Destiny. Yeah, I think we take the Judgment, and then we can either permanently deal with this Jite, or we can take care of the Spear Heliod, something. And with Gonti on the battlefield now, we'll have a target for a Recurring Nightmare. So we can't attack with this Revoker, because I don't want the Spear of Heliod to activate to kill it. So we're just going to have to hold back for now. So we'll probably use the Council's Judgment on the Spear, I'm thinking. All right, so our opponent puts Scrap Heap Scrounger back on the battlefield. And then they play a Tidehauler Sculler. Tide Hollow Sculler. All right, so they're going to take our conscripts. Ooh, Silverblade as well? Okay, so our opponent's got a decent amount of damage lined up on the battlefield now. Now there's a 4/3 double striker. So this Silverblade Paladin is also a problem. I don't really want to block with the Gonti because the Death Touch won't happen because of the double strike. We're going to need some help again here still. Our opponent is out of cards, but so are we. Okay, so Mountain not going to do it. So I think we need to get Seasoned Pyromancer. This is going to put our Recurring Nightmare back into the graveyard, unfortunately. But the Seasoned Pyromancer is going to get us to draw 2 fresh cards, and we'll get a token out of it. All right, Regisaur and a Firebolt. I think we can Firebolt as soon as we get rid of the Spear. So let's Council's Judgment first and get rid of the Spear. And then we'll be able to Firebolt either, probably the Paladin. We just can't afford to take double strike damage anymore. And then we'll still have mana left over to cast Regisaur as well. So that'll be pretty well stabilized. All right, with the Council's Judgment gone, we can now Firebolt the Paladin. And now our opponent's creatures aren't as scary. And then here we can drop our 7/6. So that worked out pretty well. Thought it was going to be an uphill battle, but we may be rounding the corner here. All right, just a Marsh Flats from our opponent, so they don't have any good attacks. And then we can just start getting in there with the Regisaur. And the Lava Claw reaches if we want to. Grave Titan? Yeah, okay. That should close the door pretty well. Trying to see, we can't kill our opponent right now. Now we can Firebolt this Tide Hollow Sculler and get our Zealous Conscripts back, but I think it's probably better just to play the Grave Titan because I don't want to discard this Titan to the Regisaur on next upkeep. If they want to triple block our Regisaur, oh, they can't. It doesn't even matter because Scrap Heap Scrounger cannot block. All right, opponent. Opponent's going to need to like wipe the board somehow. I mean, they can do it. They're in white. All right, they let us take game 1. All right, back from sideboarding, we brought in Massacre and Dam because I think both those cards will be pretty well against our opponent's white-black deck. We took out Char because I don't really want to take damage, and we took out Zealous Conscripts because our opponent didn't really show us any big, juicy targets to steal. Our opponent does have 41 cards in their deck, just to notice that. All right, we'll throw the first one back to Mulligan. This second one looks great with both Inquisition and Firebolt, and we'll likely get Gonti down soon as well. Opponent leads out on Mom. That's going to get a bolt to the face. We have both Inquisition and Duress. When faced with Inquisition versus Duress and which one to play, I'd rather play Inquisition just because it can hit everything up to 3 mana value, and Duress can only hit non-creature spells. So we'll lead with Inquisition, and then this will let us know if we need a Duress or not as well. All right, so we hit an Adeline, which Duress would have missed, and we can see there's no reason to cast Duress right now because they have a Hero and an Archangel in hand. So I'll likely end up pitching this Duress to the Seasoned Pyromancer. We'll see what our opponent does. No place. All right. Ooh. I don't want to pitch Chandra and Gonti, but I think it's worth it. We're going to have to pitch one of these, and Gonti is not quite as strong as Chandra right now. Because Chandra can down tick to kill either of these creatures. So let's play the Seasoned Pyromancer pitching Duress and Gonti, and hopefully this will find us one more mana for Chandra as well. All right, we get a Lelia and a Liliana. That's unfortunate. I mean, they're fine cards, but I was hoping to find one more land. We're going to have to hope we hit a land off the top here. That way we can play Chandra on curve, which will be really important. Because our opponent's going to get the hero down this turn. And if we can prevent the hero from attacking, that'll really help us out. Ah, man, no land. Okay. So we also cannot cast Liliana. So we only have one choice right now, and it's Lelia, and we can't even attack into the Blade Hold at this time. So this is super frustrating. Daredevil doesn't do anything because our opponent doesn't have any spells in their graveyard. So we're just going to have to play Lelia here and pass. Feels bad, man. So our opponent does have Avacyn mana up. So now my plan is to... I'm not sure what my plan is right now. We need to block a little bit. The question is, do we double block the hero Bladehold? I don't think so. Maybe we'll just take our 3. All right, so our opponent does flash in Avacyn. This means the soldier tokens on our opponent's board are going to get indestructible and survive. If we get a land now, we'll be able to downtick on the Avacyn, and this will clear the board except for the hero. Here's a message from Chill MTG in post-video production. Let's take a closer look at what Archangel Avacyn actually says. And it states at the bottom, when a non-angel creature you control dies, transform Archangel Avacyn at the beginning of the next upkeep. Then, when Archangel Avacyn transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, it deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. I mistakenly thought that killing Archangel Avacyn would deal 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. This is a good example of reading the card explains the card, and I will now increase the punt counter appropriately. Back to the game. Then we just need to find an answer for the hero. All right, so we do find the land. So do we clear the board except for Hero of Bladehold? The other option is to Liliana and downtick, or Liliana and uptick on something. We could uptick on the Avacyn, and this means that they have no blocks on our Lelia. So we'll be able to get in there with Lelia. Yeah, I'm not sure about this line. It may have been better just to clear the board except for hero. The problem is we would have to top deck an answer to hero. Otherwise, we're just going to lose. Oh no, and they GT? Okay. I don't know if we're going to be able to deal with both an Avacyn and a GT and a Hero of Bladehold. So had we played Chandra and downtick, they would have just played GT on the Hero of Bladehold this turn, and we'd have no board. The reason I didn't attack with Aurelia is we can potentially double block here on the Hero Bladehold, but the problem is with the GT, I'm not going to be able to downtick and kill the Archangel because the GT is going to get 2 counters. So let's try to double block on the Hero Bladehold here. All right, 2 counters go on the GT. We did get the hero off the battlefield, but now the Archangel can... Oh, so they use it to kill the Pyromancer. Okay. So they have 1 counter on the GT, which means they can plus Avacyn up to, I think, a 6/6. Yeah. Oh, and a creature died. So actually, yeah. So Avacyn will flip. So that'll wipe their board. Now they can plus Avacyn up to a 8/7. Gosh, I wish our opponent had like a Swords to Plowshares in their graveyard. So playing Chandra and downticking does nothing. We could play Chandra and uptick, but we won't have any mana left to play anything. I'm not sure we have any outs here. We can try and see what we got going on. We'll probably just uptick. I don't even really want to exile any cards. And our opponent will attack Chandra. I guess we'll just uptick, exile something, and see what our opponent does. Our opponent can swing in for 8 here. We really need our opponent. We really need some sort of wipe for this Archangel. All right, so they do attack Chandra, so that did save us some life. But now our opponent's starting lethal because they can uptick their GT, or they can remove counters from their GT to get lethal. Yeah, we don't have an out here. Kind of just playing this one out. The Silver Blade. Okay. Yeah. Door is closed. Got it. On to game 3. All right. We brought in a Bone Shredder and I took out the Gonti. I know. Hate me later, Gonti. Gonti's a little slow against this deck. I wanted to keep my Dire Fleet just because it's an early play if we need to. So I brought in the Bone Shredder just because we'll be able to take care of problematic cards like Avacyn. Keep this hand. We lead out on Swamp. Our opponent plays the Urza Saga. Now we'll just play Lava Claw tapped is fine. We're holding up Snuff Out right now. When our opponent plays Urza Saga on turn 1, that means they won't have the mana to pay 2 and tap the Saga to make a construct. If you play Saga on 1, you have to have some sort of ramp like a Soul Ring or some sort of Mox. Dress was a pretty sweet draw. This will kind of tell us what we need. How do we need to shape our plays here? Elspeth is going to get hit, and then our opponent's holding Cathar Commando and Figure and 4 lands. Okay, we're set up pretty well against this with our removal. So now the decision is, do we play Dire Fleet Devil for no value, just as a 2/1 first striker? And I kind of think we should. Other option is the Demonic Tutor for a card that will play pretty well instead of Dire Fleeting for no value. So the question is, what do we want to get with this Demonic Tutor? We can get one of our powerful Planeswalkers. So they're going to flash in Cathar Commando in response, which is kind of interesting. Now that they've done that, I think we just go get Liliana the Last Hope. Because then we can always just uptick on Lily to kill this Cathar Commando. Let's see if they make a construct token. My guess is they won't. All right, so they fetched up a Mox Diamond, pitching an Underground Sea, and then did not make a construct. So they get in there with the Cathar. Probably going to play their Figure. They do. They have mana from which they can grow their Figure to a 2/2. And here's where Snuff Out's pretty sweet again. Ooh, Bone Shredder was also a nice draw. But we can play Liliana here. Please, no Mana Tithe. No whammies. All right, good. That resolves. So we can uptick on the Cathar Commando. And then our opponent's probably going to think they can just grow their Figure to a 4/4 next turn and kill Liliana. But we're holding Snuff Out. And Snuff Out's going to take care of the Figure pretty nicely. So I'm going to wait on this Snuff Out. I want them to put more mana into their Figure of Destiny. We do have to hope that they don't have Tithe, because that would be pretty bad. All right, so now that they've put 3 more mana in the Figure, we're going to cast Snuff Out for 4 life. And this is kind of a blowout. Because now we have an active Planeswalker, and our opponent probably doesn't have much going on. They had just lands that we know of. 4th mana is fine. Don't really have any great plays here. We could just throw Bone Crusher Giant out as a beater. We can just threaten with our Liliana activation here with our Liliana's ultimate. I do think probably should have put Dire Fleet on the battlefield just as some sort of pressure on our opponent. Because this deck's not designed, it's not a control deck. I don't want to just, play lands and pass. All right, with our opponent doing nothing again, just Bone Crusher here. Not the greatest play, but then we can cast Bone Crusher as a 4/3 beater. And then we're kind of just holding answers in our hand. And we'll continue to uptick on the Lily. And this will threaten activation, ultimate activation in 2 turns. So our opponent flashes in Avacyn on our end step. We do not have any instant speed answers to that. So they're probably going to attack Lily, which is just going to take off some loyalty. They do. Unfortunate, but we do have answers to Avacyn now. We can Bone Shredder. We can also cast Revoker, preemptively naming Jite if we want to. Yeah, it definitely would have been good to have a Dire Fleet on the battlefield. We would have just been getting in for some additional damage here. Council's Judgment. They're probably going to name Lily, I suspect. They do. Okay. Lily down. I'm not going to pay the Echo, I don't think, on Bone Shredder. Because now Dire Fleet has a target in terms of Council's Judgment. Ooh, and Lelia was a great draw. So pretty aggressive here. So we'll swing in with both of these. That'll be 7 damage, and our opponent's on a 2-turn clock. All right, and our opponent just gives up. All right. that was the match. Great 3 matches. Really love this Rakdos deck. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chilling with me here, and I'll see you next time.